Welcome back, couples and my singles out there, to Heart's Wine from Heart's Distractions, the podcast where we spill the wine on love, connection, and all the messy distractions that try to pull us apart. Now, today, we're talking about something that every couple, every family, every human has experienced: the apology. Or should I say, the apology? Because sometimes what comes out of our mouths isn't really an apology at all. It's a blame game wrapped up in two little words: I'm sorry. How many of y'all have been on the receiving end of an apology that sounded more like shade than sincerity? Like, I'm sorry you feel that way. Or, I'm sorry, but you started it. Or, my personal favorite, I'm sorry, but if you hadn't done X, I would have done Y. Baby, that's not an apology. That's a verbal dodgeball game, and you just got smacked in the face with a ball you didn't even throw. And let's be real, shall we? Most of us have been guilty of throwing one of those half apologies ourselves. Sometimes we just want to smooth things over quickly. Sometimes our pride won't let us admit we were wrong. And sometimes we just don't know how to apologize without dragging somebody else into it. But here's the truth: apologies can either heal a relationship or quietly kill it. And if you're in a marriage, dating, co-parenting, or navigating a blended family, knowing the difference between a real apology and a blame-shifting one might be the line between connection and collapse. So, yes, of course, I'm your host, Alicia Minor Gaines, and I want you to sit back so you can pour your glass of wine, red, white, rosé, or even sparkling grape juice if that's your vibe. And let's sip on this conversation together, because by the end of this episode, you'll know exactly how to spot the difference between I'm sorry and I'm sorry, but. Let's start with the basics, shall we? What does a real apology actually look like? I'm so glad y'all asked. A true apology isn't about making yourself feel better. It's about making the other person feel heard, validated, and safe enough to trust you again. It's not just words, it's accountability plus action. I'm going to leave that there for some of y'all who ain't hear that. Because according to research from the Journal of Marriage and Family Therapy, effective apologies have three key parts. Y'all ready? 1. Acknowledgement of the offense, which is naming exactly what you did wrong. 2. Responsibility without excuses, which is owning it fully without but or finger pointing. And 3. Repair and change, which is showing through behavior that you're committed to doing better. That's it. 3 parts. But how often we mess that up? Let me tell you a story. Can I call this couple Marcus and Janelle? So Marcus and Janelle had been married for about 8 years, y'all. They loved each other deeply, but Marcus had a habit of being late. Not just, oops, I'm 5 minutes behind late, like rolling in 45 minutes after the dinner reservations type late. However, Janelle would get furious because for her, time equaled respect. And every time Marcus came strolling in with his casual, "Sorry, babe, traffic was crazy," she didn't hear an apology. She heard an excuse. Finally, one night, though, she snapped and said, "Stop saying sorry if you're not going to mean it." That was the turning point, y'all. Because in therapy, Marcus learned that his apology wasn't actually an apology. It was a deflection. His sorry was more about escaping the fight than addressing Janelle's hurt. When he finally sat her down and said, "Janelle, I was wrong for being late. I know it makes you feel disrespected and unimportant, and I don't ever want you to feel that way because of me. I'm setting reminders on my phone and I'm leaving earlier to make sure I'm on time. That, y'all, was the first time Janelle felt his apology was real. And you know what? His behavior changed. He showed up on time and the apology became an action. See, real apologies build trust because they say, I see what I did. I understand how it affected you. I take full responsibility and I'm committed to making it right. And trust me, couples who learn this survive storms that sink other relationships. Dr. Harriet Lerner, in her book, Why Won't You Apologize, says, a true apology does not include the word but. It does not shift blame. It is not about you. It is about the person you've hurt. Let that sink in, y'all. Y'all ever notice how kids apologize better than adults sometimes? A 5-year-old will walk up to you, hand you a crayon, and say, I'm sorry I broke your toy. They don't say, I'm sorry, but if you had a stronger toy, I wouldn't have broken it. No, that's adult nonsense right there. So, I want you to think back. What's the last apology you gave your partner? Did it have excuses or did it take full ownership? And if you're brave enough, ask your partner tonight if they felt your apology was genuine. Spoiler alert, the answer might surprise you. Okay, that's just the first sip, y'all. Because the next part of this, we're going to dive into what a fake apology looks like and why so many of us fall into the trap of apologizing with blame instead of ownership. Y'all ready? All right, let's get into the messy part then. Because if we're being honest, most of us have mastered the art of the non-apology. We think we're apologizing, but we're really just dressing up blame in a tuxedo and calling it sorry. You know exactly what I'm talking about here. Let me give you a few greatest hits of the fake apology playlist, shall I? It sounds like this. I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry, but if you hadn't, I'm sorry this upset you, but that wasn't my intention. And I'm sorry, but you're just too sensitive. Now listen, if your sorry comes with a built-in accusation, that's not an apology. That's a boomerang because instead of landing gently on your partner, it circles back and smacks them in the face. Here's the thing. Fake apologies don't happen because people are evil. They happen because we're human. Psychologists say there are a few reasons we slip into the blame game. Want to know what those are? Okay. The first one, protecting our ego, which is admitting fault feels like admitting weakness. Our prides hate that. Number 2, fear rejection. If we admit we're wrong, will our partner see us differently? Will they love us less? These are the questions we ask ourselves. 3, lack of emotional vocabulary. Some of us literally don't know how to put our feelings into words. So what do? We deflect instead. And 4, learned behavior, of course. I wouldn't be a therapist if I didn't throw that one in there. If we grew up in a house where apologies meant punishment or shame, we avoid taking responsibility now. And according to research from the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships, fake apologies often increase conflict instead of reducing it because they make the hurt partner feel dismissed rather than validated. So can I tell y'all about Tay and Renee, who had been dating for about 2 years? One night, Renee forgot to call when she said she would. Tay felt worried, then angry, then dismissed when Renee finally showed up. When Tay brought it up, Renee hit her with the classic, I'm sorry you feel that way, but I was busy and you know how my schedule is. Ooh, y'all, that but cut deeper than the missed phone call. Because instead of saying, I understand how I hurt you, Renee made it about Tay being too sensitive. And here's the wild part. Renee genuinely thought she was apologizing. But to Tay, it felt like a slap. That one sentence told her, your feelings don't matter as much as my excuses. And what happened next? Well, Tay stopped bringing up little hurts. And when small hurts go unspoken, they build into big resentments. Follow me, y'all. Couples therapists warn that blame-filled apologies create 3 dangerous side effects. Y'all ready? 1. Resentment grows. Your partner feels dismissed and unheard by you. 2. Trust erodes. Because if your sorry doesn't feel safe, your partner stops believing you'll change. And 3, emotional distance creeps in. Yep, the relationship starts to feel more like roommates than lovers. So, Dr. John Gottman, one of the most famous relationship researchers, says that repair attempts, apologies, jokes, gentle touches, are the number one predictor of whether a marriage survives. But here's the catch. If the repair attempt feels like blame, it's not a repair at all. Let that sink in. Because let's be real. Some of y'all's I'm sorry sound like legal disclaimers. Like you're auditioning for a lawyer role on Law and Order Relationship Crimes Unit. Yep, I said it. It sounds like, because I'm going to help y'all understand what I just said. I'm sorry, Your Honor, but my client would not have yelled if the dishwasher had been loaded correctly. No, that's not an apology. That's a closing argument, people. I know I'm cutting deep today. And couples and my singles out there, let's not ignore how culture shapes the way we do this. Because in some cultures, apologizing is seen as weakness. So people will twist words to avoid looking wrong. In others, especially collectivist cultures, saying sorry is more about keeping peace than taking ownership. Even gender plays a role here. Studies show that women tend to apologize more often, but men often view apologizing as admitting defeat. So what happens? A lot of I'm sorry, but moments where the apology is trying to protect pride instead of the relationship. Yep, that happens. I want y'all to take a second and ask yourselves, have you ever apologized with a but? Did it really fix the conflict, or did it just push the fight down the road for another day? If your partner gave you the same apology, would you feel healed or dismissed? Think about it, because here's the bottom line. When you use fake apologies, we're not solving the problem. We're just putting a Band-Aid over a bullet hole. And eventually, that wound bleeds into every part of the relationship. Okay? So y'all know we're about to dig into where these apology styles come from. Because I have to give y'all that. Because, spoiler alert, a lot of it starts way before we even get into a relationship with our families, our upbringing, and the generational patterns we inherit without even knowing it. So, don't go nowhere. If you got to refill your glass, let's do that. Okay, because we've talked about, yes, real apologies, and we've talked about the fake ones. Now let's talk about where those habits come from. Because trust me, the way we apologize or don't apologize usually starts long before we ever fall in love. Some of us grew up in homes where sorry was as common as saying, pass the salt. Others grew up where nobody apologized for anything, ever. Some of y'all never heard your parents admit fault a day in their lives. And now here you are 35 years old wondering why you choke on the word sorry, like it's a chicken bone. I'm going to let that one sink in. Because let's be real. Our parents, grandparents, even great-grandparents passed down more than recipes and family stories. They passed down emotional habits. Can I break that down for y'all? So, We're going to call, let's say, our silent generation and baby boomers born between 1925 and 1964. In many of those households, saying sorry was rare. Authority figures, such as dads, moms, pastors, didn't apologize to kids. They believed respect came from strength and not humility. Follow me, y'all. My Gen X's out there, my 1965 to my 1980s. Apologies were a mixed bag. Some families loosened up, but others still believed children should be seen and not heard. Kids didn't get apologies, they got rules. And let's bring it home. From my millennials and Gen Zs, the 1981s to today's time. Yes, we're the ones saying, wait a minute, mom and dad, you traumatized me, and you will acknowledge it. Okay. We're demanding apologies in a way that older generations never did. And this creates friction in relationships, right? A millennial dating a boomer-minded partner will constantly feel that tug of war, I promise you. Why can't you just say sorry versus why are you making such a big deal out of it? That's what it sounds like, I promise you. Can I give y'all a story on this? Follow me. We're going to call this couple Carlos and Asia. Carlos grew up in a family where apologies were rare. His dad's favorite line was, "Life's not fair, get over it." How many of y'all heard that? His mom loved him deeply, but showed it more through cooking meals than through words. Now fast forward, Carlos is in his 30s dating Asia. She's used to open communication. She grew up in a family where they hash things out at dinner tables, sometimes with too much passion. So when Carlos hurt her feelings and just went silent, Asia was left wondering, does he even care? Carlos wasn't heartless. He was repeating a pattern. To him, not talking about it was the apology. To Asia, not talking felt like neglect. That's what generational patterns do. They put two people in the same argument but speaking totally different emotional languages. Now, let's layer culture on top of that, shall we? Because sorry looks different depending on where you come from. Collectivist cultures like many Asian, African, and Latino communities often use apologies to keep group harmony. Sometimes people apologize not because they feel guilty, but because they don't want conflict. So the apology might be about peacekeeping more than accountability. Individualist cultures like the US or parts of Europe emphasize personal responsibility. But guess what? That sometimes turns into defensiveness. People feel like an apology equals weakness or losing face. And religious influence, let's not forget that one, because this also matters. In some traditions, forgiveness is expected quickly. So people learn to say sorry fast, but not always sincerely, because the expectation is forgive and move on. I'm going to leave that one right there for some of y'all. According to a 2018 study in the Journal of Cross-Cultural Psychology, Japanese people were found to apologize more frequently, even for minor inconveniences, as a form of politeness. Let that sink in. And in contrast, Americans often apologize less, reserving it for major offenses, such as sometimes leading others to see them as arrogant or dismissive. And gender plays a role too here. A University of Waterloo study found that women tend to apologize more often, not necessarily because they're more at fault, but because they perceive more behaviors as needing an apology. And men, on the other hand, apologize less often because they don't view certain behaviors as offensive. So what happens when these cultural and gender patterns collide in a relationship? Whew, I'll tell you, fireworks. works. It's like the couple who fights because one says, "You didn't even apologize for leaving the towel on the floor." And the other says, "Apologize? Babe, that's not a crime scene. It's a towel." See? Y'all see the difference? Different generations, different standards, and different towel philosophies existed in that conversation. But here's the good news. Just because you learned a broken apology style doesn't mean you're stuck with it. Therapists often talk about interrupting the cycle. That means naming the pattern. That sounds like, "My dad never apologized, so I struggle with it." And then intentionally practicing a new one. Because let's be clear, love is not about being perfect. Love is about being willing to learn. Here's my challenge for you. Think back, how did your parents apologize, if at all? Do you carry those same habits into your current relationship? And most importantly, are those habits helping you or hurting you? I want y'all to think about this, y'all, and really reflect on that. Because apologies aren't just about this moment. They're about the history we bring into this moment. When we understand the generational and cultural roots of sorry, we can stop repeating patterns and start rewriting them. And speaking of damage, let's slide right on into the next part because it's time to talk about what happens when fake apologies pile up over time. Spoiler alert, they don't just disappear. They leave scars. All right, y'all, let's talk about the real cost of fake apologies. Because let's be honest, it's easy to brush them off. We tell ourselves, well, at least they said something. Or, I don't want to start another fight, so I'll just let it go. But here's the truth. Fake apologies are like termites in a house. You don't always see the damage right away, but over time, they eat away at the foundation until everything feels shaky. When someone gives a half apology, "I'm sorry you're upset," or "I'm sorry, but you," it doesn't soothe the hurt. It actually pours salt in the wound. And why? Because the person on the receiving end hears what? "Your feelings aren't valid. This wasn't my fault, so don't expect me to change. And you're the problem, not me." And when those messages repeat over months or even years, resentment builds like plague on a tooth. Yep, I said it. According to the American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy, unresolved conflicts, especially those where apologies feel hollow, are one of the top predictors of divorce. In fact, studies show that couples who fail to repair after arguments divorce at rates almost 50% higher than those who learn how to make genuine repairs. Can I share a story with y'all? We're going to call this couple Darnell and Keisha. So, Darnell and Keisha had been married for 12 years. They loved each other, raised 2 kids together. But when it came to conflict, Darnell's apologies were always laced with blame. If he snapped at Keisha, he'd say, "I'm sorry, but you know I'm stressed at work." If he forgot to pick up the kids, he'd shrug and say, "I'm sorry, but you should have reminded me." Now, Keisha didn't leave him after the first or the fifth or even the 15th fake apology. But slowly, brick by brick, her trust in him crumbled. She stopped confiding in him. She stopped believing his promises. And by the time they landed in therapy, Keisha said, "I feel like I'm married to a man who's never actually wrong. And if he's never wrong, then how can I ever feel right?" Y'all, that hit home. That's what fake apologies do. They make one partner carry the emotional weight while the other escapes accountability. And over time, that imbalance crushes intimacy. So let's be real. Trust isn't broken by one mistake. It's broken by repeated patterns of hurt without repair. Dr. John Gottman says that the success of a relationship isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about how you repair after conflict. When apologies are fake, the repair attempt fails and the emotional bank account of the relationship starts overdrafting. Think of it like this: every hurt is a withdrawal, every real apology is a deposit. But if you keep writing checks with fake apologies, eventually the relationship account goes bankrupt. Y'all ever meet someone who says sorry the way stores say, sorry, we're closed? It's not about you. It's just a sign they flip out to stop you from knocking on the door. That's what fake apologies are. Sorry, we're closed signs. No real accountability inside. I know some of y'all rolled y'all eyes at me, but that's okay. But here's where it gets dangerous. Fake apologies don't just hurt feelings in the moment. They create emotional distance. Couples start living parallel lives. They might still share a bed, still raise kids, still pay the bills together, but emotionally, they feel like roommates. And intimacy, forget it. It's hard to want closeness with someone who keeps dismissing your pain. How many of y'all feel me on that one? Well, according to a 2019 survey from the Journal of Family Psychology, couples who reported consistent use of blame-filled apologies were 62% more likely to describe their relationship as dissatisfying and emotionally distant. Even more striking, y'all, couples who practice genuine repair attempts, real apologies, followed by change behavior, were 35% more likely to report high marital satisfaction 5 years later. Translation? A real apology isn't just nice. It's relationship glue. How many of y'all holding it together? And here's another thing we don't talk about enough. Forgiveness fatigue. I know some of y'all are like, what is that? Well, it's when one partner keeps giving fake apologies and the other keeps forgiving. Eventually, the forgiver burns out. They get tired of carrying the whole load. They start thinking, why am I the only one trying here? That's how relationships end, not with a big blow up, but with one person quietly giving up because they're exhausted. So I want you to pause and reflect for a second. Have you ever accepted a fake apology just to keep the peace? Did you actually bring peace, or did it just bury the conflict deeper? And if you're the one giving the sorry but, are you ready to admit how it's affecting your partner? Couples and my singles out there, here's the truth. Fake apologies might feel easier in the moment, but in the long run, they cost more than they save. They cost trust, they cost intimacy, and sometimes the cost is within your relationship altogether. But don't worry, we're not leaving it here. I promise you. We're going to break down the anatomy of a true apology, what it looks like, how it feels, and how you can practice it, even if you didn't grow up with good examples. Because the good news is, it's never too late to learn how to say, I'm sorry, the right way. All right. We've dragged fake apologies across the coals. Now, let's talk about the real thing. Because if fake apologies tear relationships apart, real apologies stitch them back together, right? Think about it. A true apology is like wine. Y'all know I had to go there. It takes patience, honesty, and a little vulnerability to get it right. And when it's done well, it ends up being smooth, healing, and worth savoring. So what does a real apology look like? Let's break it down step by step, shall we? Therapists often say a genuine apology has 5 main ingredients. Think of it like a recipe. You miss one, and the whole dish flops. So, We start off with 1, acknowledgement of the offense. Say what you did. Be specific, such as, I was wrong for yelling at you in front of our kids. Not vague nonsense like, sorry for whatever I did. That's not an apology. 2, taking responsibility. Don't add in the buts. No excuses either. Just own it by saying, I hurt you, and that's on me. I promise you'll get a lot with that line right there. 3, expressing remorse. Let your partner see that you feel their pain. Let it sound like, I regret making you feel small, and I never want to hurt you like that again. How many hearts did that just touch? 4, offering amends. Ask, how can I make this right? Actually follow through on that. Sometimes it's more than just the words. Sometimes it's the actions. And 5, commitment to change. The most powerful apology isn't spoken, it's lived. Behavior has to shift or the words mean nothing. All right, I'm going to give y'all an example. We're going to call this couple Maya and Jordan. So Maya and Jordan been living together for about 3 years. Jordan had a habit of leaving messes, clothes on the floor, dishes in the sink, the usual. And Maya often felt disrespected. One night, after a big fight, Jordan tried to apologize, which sounded like, I'm sorry, but I get distracted. You're just neater than me. Maya didn't feel seen at all. And in therapy, Jordan learned the anatomy of a true apology. The next time he said, Maya, I was wrong for leaving the dishes after you cooked. I know it makes you feel unappreciated, and I regret not respecting your effort. I'll start rinsing and putting things in the dishwasher right after dinner from now on. I don't want you to feel like I take you for granted. Y'all, Maya's jaw dropped. But do you see the difference? That apology had all 5 ingredients. And guess what? Maya's shoulders literally dropped in relief as well. She felt heard, valued, and respected. And the change stuck, y'all, as well. According to a study from the Journal of Family Issues, apologies that include both acknowledgement and a commitment to change are 3 times more likely to repair trust than those that only include words of regret. Translation? I'm sorry doesn't work unless your actions back it up. I'm gonna let that sit there. And you know me, I love weaving in poetry. So here's a short piece for y'all. A sorry without change is a hollow sound. A promise broken before it's found. But a sorry that breathes with action true can mend the me, the us, the you. Come on, finger snaps, y'all. And listen, don't get wild with it either. Some of y'all turn an apology into a TED Talk. Baby, I just want to acknowledge your worth, the sanctity of our union, and how I've reflected deeply on my character flaws. By the time you're done, your partner's asleep on the couch if they heard that. Keep it sincere. Keep it simple. Don't over-season the dish. The old saying is, KIS, keep it simple, stupid. I'm just throwing it in there. But here's why those 5 steps matter. Acknowledgement validates pain. It says, I see you. Responsibility builds trust. It says, I own this. Remorse creates connection. It says, I feel with you. Amends restore balance. It says, I'll help repair the damage. And commitment to change offers hope because it says it won't happen again. When all 5 show up, healing begins, even if the wound was deep. Here's a little exercise I want you to try tonight. Think of a recent moment when you hurt your partner, even in a small way. Write down an apology using all 5 of those ingredients. Then read it out loud to your partner without adding but or excuses. Then switch roles. Let them do the same for you. You'll be shocked how something so simple can shift the energy between you. So ask yourself, when you apologize, do you hit all 5 steps or just the sorry part? What would it look like to add responsibility, remorse, amends, and change to your next apology? And maybe, most importantly, when was the last time your partner really believed your apology? Couples and my singles out there, the anatomy of a true apology is simple, but it's not easy. It takes humility, courage, and practice. But when you get it right, it's like turning the key that unlocks intimacy again. Because here's the truth. Words matter, but actions matter more. And speaking of that, we're diving into those moments where even the best "I'm sorry" just isn't enough. Times where words can carry the weight and actions have to step up. So I want y'all to take a moment and refill your glass if you need to. Take some deep breaths, because I know we've been in some heavy stuff, but we about to get into even some more heaviness. Because so far we've broken down the anatomy of a true apology. But here's where it gets real. Sometimes even the best apology isn't enough for some of us. And let's let that sink in, shall we? Because sometimes "I'm sorry" is just too light for the weight of the damage done. Words can open the door, but it takes actions, consistent, lived out actions to actually walk through and rebuild trust. And here's the truth. Saying "I'm sorry" is like putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone. It might cover the wound, but it doesn't heal the fracture. Healing requires time, consistency, and proof that the behavior will change. Marriage and family therapy research shows that when trust has been broken, especially in cases of infidelity, repeated dishonesty, or ongoing neglect, partners don't just need apologies. They need a sustained pattern of accountability. In other words, apologies start the repair, but actions finish it. Okay, for some of y'all that don't believe me, let me bring this home with a story. We're going to call this couple Leah and Andre. So, Leah discovered that Andre had been messaging an old flame on social media, y'all. Y'all know how social media is messing up some of y'all relationships. I'm just saying. Nothing physical had happened, but to Leah, it was an emotional betrayal. When confronted, of course, Andre gave what sounded like a perfect apology. And it sounded like this. "Leah, I was wrong. I shouldn't have messaged her. I know I've broken your trust and I regret hurting you. I'll delete her number and block her. I don't ever want to put you in this position again." I know some of y'all just rolled your eyes and said he was lying, but on paper, that was solid. But here's the thing. Leah didn't feel reassured just from the words. Over the next few weeks, what mattered more was Andre showing consistency, sharing his phone, being transparent about his whereabouts, checking in without being asked. That pattern became the true apology. And without it, his words would have felt empty. This is where many couples struggle. One partner keeps apologizing for the same behavior. Forgetting, snapping, neglecting, or worse. And the other partner keeps forgiving. But here's the danger. Eventually, the forgiver burns out. And again, yes, that's called forgiveness fatigue. You can only hear "I'm sorry" without change so many times before it starts sounding like background noise. And when that happens, resentment hardens in distance. Distance hardens in disconnection. And sometimes disconnection turns into separation. According to Dr. Shirley Glass, author of Not Just Friends, Rebuilding trust after betrayal requires three key things beyond an apology. One, transparency, which is yes, full honesty and no hidden doors. Consistency, not just one time efforts, right? But sustained action. And three, empathy, showing that you truly understand and care about your partner's pain. And without those, sorry is just a word, not a repair. Let's be honest, y'all. If you say sorry but keep doing the same thing, your apology is about as useful as a chocolate teapot. Looks sweet, but melts the second there's heat. Let that one sink in. And here's where it gets heavy. Sometimes sorry isn't just insufficient, it becomes manipulative. Think about it. A partner cheats, apologizes, but does it again. A partner yells, apologizes, but keeps blowing up. A parent apologizes to a child, but repeats the same hurtful patterns. At that point, the apology isn't healing. It's a get out of jail free card. And that kind of cycle is toxic. This is why therapists and often, yes, relationship coaches tell couples, don't just listen to the apology, watch the behavior. I'm going to let that one sit there while I share this story. We're going to call this couple Malik and Deshawn. So, Malik and Deshawn have been in a long-term relationship. Malik struggled with spending. He'd overspend on shoes, gadgets, dinners out, and it created financial stress. Every time Deshawn confronted him, Malik would say, "I'm sorry, babe, I'll do better." But guess what? The cycle repeated. And eventually, Deshawn snapped and said, "I don't want another apology. I want a budget. I want accountability. I want you to see that you actually need to change, and I want to see you actually change." That moment shifted the relationship, y'all. Malik had to learn that his apologies were empty without financial responsibility attached. Because love isn't sustained on sorry. It's sustained on trust that the mistake won't keep repeating. Are we clear? So here's the real question. When is sorry not enough? When it's the same behavior repeated without change. When the hurt is deep, betrayal, dishonesty, emotional neglect, and when the apology is used as a tool to silence, not repair. In those moments, you need more than sorry. You need change behavior, accountability, and often professional support, whether therapy, coaching, or honest third-party intervention. So tonight, I want you to ask yourself and your partner, is there something you've been apologizing for repeatedly without changing? Has your partner stopped believing you're sorry because your actions didn't follow? And here's the hardest one. Are you using apologies to silence conflict or to actually heal it? Whew, y'all, I'll say it plain for you. An apology without change is manipulation, not love. Words matter, but actions are the proof. I want y'all to stay with me here because we're going to stir the pot a little. Because we're diving into a controversial question. Do we apologize too much? Yep, you heard me right. Sometimes we say sorry so often it loses all meaning. And when that happens, even the genuine ones don't land the way they should. All right, come on with me with your glass of wine because it's time to ruffle some feathers. We've been talking about fake apologies and how damaging they are. But let me flip the script. Is it possible to apologize too much? Yeah, you heard me right. Can you actually say sorry so often it becomes meaningless? Here's the thing. Not every sorry is equal. Sometimes we use apologies like currency. We hand them out for every little thing. Sorry I'm late. Sorry the food's not perfect. Sorry I interrupted you. Sorry, I exist. Hold up now. That last one. That's the problem. Over apologizing isn't humility, it's insecurity. And when you do it in a relationship, it can make your partner feel like you're not really present. It turns sorry into background noise. Studies from the University of Waterloo show that women in particular tend to apologize more often than men, right? Y'all heard me say that. Not because they mess up more, but because they perceive more of their actions as offensive. Men, on the other hand, apologize less, often because they don't see certain behaviors as apology worthy. So, what happens when you put the two together? One person is apologizing constantly, the other hardly at all. That imbalance creates frustration. The frequent apologizer feels unheard, and the non apologizer feels nagged. How about that? Can I bring this home in a short story? We're going to call this couple Emily and Chris. Emily grew up in a family where conflict meant chaos. So as an adult, she apologized for everything just to keep the peace. Chris, meanwhile, came from a family where nobody said sorry. To him, apologies felt unnecessary unless he had done something major. So Emily said sorry 10 times a day for things like forgetting to grab the mail. Chris rarely apologized for anything. What happened? Emily's apology started to feel like white noise, and Chris' lack of apologies made her feel alone. Both of them missed the balance, y'all. And here's the kicker. Sometimes over apologizing isn't about humility at all. It's about avoiding deeper conversations. I'm sorry, let's just move on. Does that sound familiar? Because that's not an apology. That's a distraction. That's saying, I don't want to deal with this right now, so let me throw out a quick sorry and hope you'll drop it. But love can't thrive on avoidance. Couples need resolution, not band-aids. And some of y'all out here putting on band-aids. I'm just saying. Some of y'all say sorry the way Chick-fil-A employees say, my pleasure. It's automatic. Somebody sneezes across the room and you're like, sorry. No, baby, you didn't make them sneeze. Relax. Let's not forget, apology frequency is cultural too. In Japan, people apologize frequently as a form of politeness. Y'all heard me say that, right? Even for things that aren't their fault. And in the US, apologies are more transactional, reserved for bigger issues. So when you bring people from different cultural backgrounds together in a relationship, ooh, y'all, there's some sparks. One partner feels like the other never apologizes, and the other feels like apologies are being tossed around like confetti. Y'all heard me say it. When you apologize too often, here's what happens. Your partner stops believing your words. The apologies lose weight, and the real ones get lost in the noise. It's like crying wolf. If you say sorry every 10 minutes, then when the big hurt comes, your partner might not feel the sincerity. So here's the challenge. Pay attention to how often you say sorry in one day. Ask yourself, am I apologizing because I truly did something wrong or because I'm uncomfortable with conflict? Then ask your partner, do my apologies feel sincere to you or do they feel automatic? I promise you the answers might surprise you, but here's my controversial takeaway. Apologizing too little damages relationships, but apologizing too much can do the same. Balance is key. Sorry should mean something. It shouldn't. It should be sacred. Okay. We're going to shift gears into something practical here. Enough theory. Let's get hands on. I'm going to give you some actual tools and exercises you and your partner can use to practice making apologies that heal instead of harm. Because let's be real, it's one thing to talk about apologizing, but it's another to practice it. And we're about to do just that. So we've been sipping on theory, stories, and even a little controversy. But you know me, I don't like to leave you with just talk. I want to give y'all some things to put in action. I want to give you some things that you can actually do tonight, this week, or even next time you and your partner hit a bump. Because learning how to apologize is like learning how to dance. Talking about rhythm is one thing, but you've got to get up, move your body, and practice if you want to stop stepping on each other's toes. So, can we get practical here? For your first exercise, we're going to call this the redo apology. This one's simple but powerful. Think of a recent fight where the apology didn't land right. Write down the apology you gave or wish you had given. Now rewrite it using the 5 ingredients we talked about earlier, which is acknowledge the offense, take responsibility, express remorse, offer amends, and commit to change. Then sit with your partner and say it out loud. Look them in the eyes, no phone, no distractions, just you, them, and the words. Here's the tip. Research in the Journal of Marriage and Family Therapy shows that couples who practice redoing apologies in therapy sessions report higher satisfaction because it gives them a chance to reframe conflict into repair. All right, follow me on this next exercise. We're going to call it the 24-hour rule because here's a little rule to prevent those I'm sorry but moments. When conflict happens, don't rush into an apology just to shut it down. Take up to 24 hours to cool off, reflect, and figure out what you're actually apologizing for. Then come back with clarity because rushing leads to defensive apologies. Reflection leads to meaningful ones. Can I bring this home in a story? We're going to use this couple, we're going to call them Jasmine and Malik. So, Jasmine and Malik had a cycle. They would argue, rush an apology, fight again the next day. But in relationship coaching, they started using the 24-hour rule. Malik learned that he often apologized just to end the fight, not because he understood Jasmine's hurt. Taking that pause gave him time to reflect, so when he came back, his apology carried weight. Jasmine said for the first time in years, she felt like his words weren't just band-aids. They were real stitches, y'all. All right. I'm going to give y'all exercise number 3. We're going to call this the apology plus action combo. This one's for couples who are tired of hearing words without seeing proof. When you apologize, immediately follow it with a small action that shows you mean it. Example, forgot to pick up dinner? Apologize, then surprise your partner with a home-cooked meal the next night. Yell during an argument? Apologize, then commit to a pause word for future fights to prevent blow-ups. And God forbid, if you miss date night, definitely you want to apologize. Then plan the next one without being asked. Actions are the receipts of your apology. Without them, sorry is just a slogan. You ever notice how some people say sorry like they're offering store credit? Sorry I hurt you. Here's a coupon for 10% off my next screw up. No. Give me a refund and fix the product. Okay, follow me, y'all. Exercise 4, we're going to call it the Switch Shoes Challenge. Here's where it gets real uncomfortable, though, because this is going to be followed by some real healing. So I want you to sit with your partner and take turns saying, here's how I felt when you hurt me. Then switch and let your partner repeat back what they heard, word for word. Then I want you to switch roles. This forces both of you to slow down, listen, and step into each other's shoes. It turns apology into empathy. And empathy is where the true repair begins. Exercise 5, y'all know I got to throw it in there, y'all. Couples journaling. Start a shared journal where you both write apologies when you can't get the words out in the heat of the moment. Take time to write what you're sorry for, why it mattered, and what you'll do differently next time. Then read them together weekly. Couples who journal together show improved communication because writing slows down defensiveness and allows for more thoughtful repair. I want you to take these into your week. When was the last time you gave an apology backed by real action? Do you rush into apologies just to make it go away? And how could practicing these 5 exercises change the way your partner receives your apologies? Because here's the truth: practice makes progress. You don't have to nail the perfect apology every time, but if you're willing to try these exercises, you'll not only repair conflict faster, you'll build trust, intimacy, and safety in ways that last. And speaking of trust, we're going to talk about what happens after the apology. Because saying sorry is one thing, but rebuilding forgiveness and moving forward, that's the real test, y'all. Come on with me. Because we've pulled apart fake apologies, practiced the anatomy of the real thing, and even walked through some exercises. But let's be honest. I know some of y'all tired. But the hardest part isn't saying I'm sorry. It's moving forward after the apology. Because forgiveness, oof, that's the real wine. Sometimes it's sweet, sometimes it's bitter, and sometimes it takes years to mature before you can even sip it. Let's clear this up first, though. Forgiveness is not forgetting. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending it never happened. It doesn't mean excusing the behavior, and it doesn't mean you have to tolerate repeated harm. What forgiveness does mean is letting go of the resentment that eats away at you. As Lewis Smears once wrote, to forgive is to set a prisoner free and discover that the prisoner was you. Forgiveness is freedom, but freedom takes work. Let me give y'all a short story. We're going to call this couple Tanya and Greg. Tanya discovered Greg had been hiding credit card debt, y'all. She felt betrayed because money was already tight and his secrecy rocked her trust. Greg apologized, took responsibility, and even set up financial counseling. But Tanya couldn't forgive him right away. She wanted to because she loved him. But every time a bill came in the mail, her stomach dropped. It took months of Greg showing consistent transparency, such as opening bank accounts, shared passwords, budgeting together, before Tanya felt safe enough to say, "Okay, I forgive you." That's the point, y'all. Forgiveness is a process, not a moment. According to the American Psychological Association, forgiveness in relationships is linked to the following: lower stress and anxiety, stronger physical health, holding grudges actually hurts your body, greater long-term relationship satisfaction. But here's the catch. Forgiveness only works if the person apologizing follows through with consistent change. Otherwise, forgiveness turns into enabling. Let's sit with that for a second. Because forgiveness is about healing. Enabling is about allowing the same wound to be cut over and over. If your partner apologizes but keeps repeating the behavior, that's not a relationship growing in love. That's a cycle of harm, and you deserve more than that. Now, don't get it twisted. Forgiveness doesn't mean acting like Oprah. You get forgiveness, everybody gets forgiveness. No, baby, forgiveness is intentional. It's earned, it's cultivated. Let's be clear on that. Dr. Sue Johnson, creator of emotionally focused therapy, says the most functional way to regulate difficult emotions in love relationships is to share them. That means if you're the hurt partner, part of forgiveness is expressing what you need to feel safe again. And if you're the one apologizing, forgiveness requires you to consistently meet those needs. Forgiveness isn't magic. It's built through repair attempts that land. If you're in the forgiveness stage, here are some steps to help you move forward. 1. Name the hurt clearly. Don't forgive in a vague term. Be specific. Acknowledge the progress. Recognize when your partner shows change. It reinforces growth. I promise you. Set boundaries. Forgiveness doesn't mean endless second chances. And be firm with those boundaries, I might add. And the last one, celebrate healing moments. When trust is rebuilt, honor it. Go on that date. Toast with that wine. Acknowledge the progress. Can I give y'all a short story on this one? We're going to call this couple Lewis and Daniel. Lewis cheated emotionally, y'all. Texting late at night with someone from work. When Daniel found out, he was devastated. Lewis apologized, cut contact with the coworker, and did everything Daniel asked, such as therapy, relationship coaching, transparency, and consistent effort. Forgiveness didn't come fast, y'all, but one night, a year later, Daniel realized he had gone the whole day without replaying the betrayal in his head. That's when he knew forgiveness had taken root. Because forgiveness doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just slips in quietly when the pain doesn't sting the way it used to. I want you to sit with these questions tonight. Is there something in your relationship you've been holding on to that needs forgiveness? If so, what would it take for you to feel safe enough to forgive? And if you're the one seeking forgiveness, are your actions making it easier for your partner to move forward or harder? Y'all, forgiveness is one of the hardest wines to pour, but it's also one of the sweetest when it's real. It doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't erase the past, but it creates the possibility of a new future, one where love has a chance to grow deeper because you walk through the fire together. In our final part of this segment, we're going to bring this all home, I promise you. Of course, we'll recap the big truths, leave you with a call to action, and you already know, end it with a toast. So don't go nowhere, stick around, because we've been on a journey tonight, y'all, a whole journey. We sipped the sweet, the bitter, and the messy parts of what it really means to say I'm sorry. We talked about what a real apology looks like, ownership, remorse, and change. We dragged those fake apologies for filth, the ones that come with excuses, blame, or buts. We looked at how our families, cultures, and even generations shape the way we say or don't say sorry. We saw how fake apologies corrode trust while true ones rebuilt it. We broke down the anatomy of a heartfelt apology, the 5 ingredients that make it stick. We admitted that sometimes sorry just isn't enough. Actions have to carry the weight. We stirred the pot with the idea that some of us apologize too much and watered down the word. We practiced real tools and exercises, the redo apology, the 24-hour rule, the switch shoes challenge. And finally, we talked about forgiveness, that long, winding road that makes true healing possible. Here's the takeaway. Apologies aren't just words, they're bridges. And whether that bridge holds or collapses depends on the foundation you build under it. Honesty, accountability, humility, and action. So tonight, I want you to ask yourself one last question. When I say I'm sorry, am I building a bridge to my partner's heart? Or am I just building an exit ramp to avoid responsibility? Because here's the truth. Love doesn't need perfection. Love needs repair. And the difference between relationships that crumble and relationships that last often comes down to 2 words. I'm sorry. The real kind. If tonight's episode stirred something in you, if it made you reflect, laugh, or maybe even squirm a little, I want you to keep this journey going with us. Subscribe to my YouTube channel at Hearts Wine from Harsh Distractions. Visit my website at www.aliciasdistractions.com. Purchase my poetry book, Distractions of the Heart, on Amazon, because sometimes the best way to heal is to put our tears into words. And of course, follow us on social media on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. This podcast is about real, raw, and sometimes controversial conversations. And couples, we can't do it without you. My singles, we can't do it without you either. So until next time, remember, don't just say sorry to say it to mean it. Say it to heal. Say it to love better. Now raise your glass with me to the messy, the beautiful, the complicated journey of love. Cheers.